Every 2 weeks, I'll ask my YouTube audience to give me builds. Now, these builds don't necessarily have to be good, they just have to be interesting. The point of a video game is, as we often forget, to have fun. So the only point I'm hoping to get out of this is to have fun. But unfortunately, from the list of builds I was given on my live stream, it was Glock and Ball torture. Today I'm going to bring you 5 builds. Unfortunately, none for Titans. Sorry, Titans are going to have to wait till next time. I'm going to judge these builds offense, defense, versatility, survivability, speed, and consistency, and then give them a rating for flavor and viability. Worst case scenario, you'll enjoy the suffering that these have brought upon me. Best case scenario, you might find a build that you can end up using as a serious, fun, and powerful build for many, many seasons to come. Most of these are going to be off meta, so the likelihood of them getting nerfed is very slim. We're going to start ourselves off here with a build that Casso Romeo called the Flying Lion build, which you can only imagine how this is going to work. This is a fighting lion with a fusion rifle and the, in my opinion, underappreciated Rain of Fire boots. The whole point of this build is to be fast and aggressive while constantly spamming damage out, sort of similar to how somebody like Pharah might play in Overwatch. This build extremely surprised me. I was expecting this to be a bit of a joke, as obviously Fighting Lion isn't necessarily considered the most competitive weapon. However, it has a very devoted cult following. Yes, I see the YouTube comments, but this one, like I mentioned, it really caught me off guard. I was not expecting the amount of enjoyment that I got out of shooting somebody with a Fighting Lion, dodging in the air towards or away from them, much to their dismay, only to end up firing and blasting them one more time. Often my second shot was better than my first because they didn't really know what to expect, and the second round of 130 something damage to their facial region and or groin was always amusing. Not to mention ragdolls in this game are a treat and a blessing from God himself. The biggest thing that this build struggled with was its ability to handle more precision based players, which of course is, you know, just kind of the name of the game with Fighting Lion in general, especially because we lacked a really solid long range option, being that our secondary weapon was a Stasis fusion rifle. Now, this Stasis fusion rifle did supply the much needed mid to close range that we were desperately needing with this Fighting Lion, but it still struggled every now and then. Now, the Fighting Lion and the boots do offer a really nice combo of effectively getting 2 shots within your Fighting Lion, but unless you're already good at the Fighting Lion, this build is going to be difficult for you. If you're looking for something different and unique, this is definitely something to try. This is definitely not for everybody though. Offense 6, defense 6, versatility 5, survivability 7, speed 9, consistency 6, flavor S, viability B-. Good for spamming damage in the general area, but again, if you're not really good at using those projectiles and you're not good at dodging on cue, this might be a bit difficult. There's a few times I ended up yeeting myself off the map, but man, was this so much fun. That flavor for S is well deserved. Our next build is another Warlock build here today. And this build uses the Cryostasia, a exotic sidearm that I think is a little underappreciated right now, especially since the changes to sidearms making them far more consistent. We're of course pairing this because we want to simulate a Russian winter with the Osmiomancy gloves and a glaive. Now, my thought process going into this was to sort of use the glaive as a general close range tool, but I quickly learned that probably the best way to play this is to sort of like cheap bow swap, like the dollar store version of bow swap with this, where you lead with a glaive shot, immediately swap into the sidearm for cleanup. Cryostasia is absolutely fantastic if you have the right build for it, because you're pretty much able to consistently chain those freeze shots every single engagement. It just takes a little bit longer than you might anticipate. It's actually kind of funny how often players, when they get frozen, kind of give up on trying to shoot back at you, and instead their fight or flight response kick in, and they often default to fleeing far and as fast as they can, which makes it easier for your cleanup. We did have some really good teammates on the enemy team, which made this a bit tricky, but the amount of times I was able to handle almost every single engages, on top of just Warlock, Stasis Warlock being so underappreciated in between the freeze rifts, guaranteeing a few kills if you're good with it, freeze melee's doing more of the same, and the Osmiomancy gloves allowing us to say no to anything that's trying to push us, made this build way more viable than it had any right to be. Offense 7, defense 7, versatility 5, survivability 5, speed 5, consistency 6, flavor A, viability B+. It's lacked a little something. It felt very close, and it's something that I'm definitely going to need to investigate more because, like I said, I do believe the Cryostasia is probably a little slept on right now. Next up from Riptide is the idea of a Stasis Lock that uses the claws of Ahamkara. Again, another exotic piece that might be a little underappreciated, especially because of how powerful the Warlock melees have become with all the 3.0 reworks. This build did use the duality, a slug/spread shot shotgun that feels like it's kind of fallen off the radar. Weirdly, I hardly ever see it anymore, despite it still being a fantastic shotgun, and we had probably the absolute perfect pulse rifle for this build. Having both Pugilist and Swashbuckler meant that our Claws of Ahamkara were able to supply ourselves with a much needed boost of calcium and steroids so that we can continue our reign of terror. I really did enjoy freezing targets, and I'm surprised we're not seeing more Stasis Lock in general like I mentioned in the last build. This build is a lot of fun. If you've got a good pulse rifle that can really lean in on the whole melee business, try the Claws of Ahamkara with your Stasis Lock. This will definitely benefit you, especially being that right now a lot of people are running around beating their chests like a monkey, well, an arc-charged monkey. This is an excellent counter to that. Offense 7, defense 9. This thing is like hitting a brick wall if the player is competent, of which unfortunately I wasn't completely competent every time. Versatility 8, survivability 6, speed 5, consistency 7. Flavor B+. This is just pulse shotgun at the end of the day, but I do have to give it a couple points for the stasis plays. Viability A. Don't worry guys, we're almost to the Glock and Ball build. I know my audience well enough to know that that's what you're sitting on the edge of your seat for. But last, we have just one more Warlock build. It seemed to be a very popular choice for that stream. This is from Duke Kempe, who is the idea of a trace rifle with the Rat King and a Warlock running the chromatic fire. Now, if you haven't been with the channel for very long, or you haven't seen very many other videos that we've done with these sort of more tongue-in-cheek style of your builds are stupid, you might not know that I despise trace rifles. I actually was trying to figure out what would make them more viable. I think it's probably consistency, maybe more body shot damage, but they just feel like a special ammo version of sidearms. Maybe that's because sidearms are insane, but of the sidearms that we ended up getting, Rat King is probably my favorite. I love how this thing operates. Unfortunately, it is 100% counterproductive to my build. The Rat King gives void invisibility and healing upon getting a kill and reloading, but none of my build really plays around that idea. The Rat King and the Trace Rifle overlapped with each other, which just meant that they were basically playing like siblings, trying to get to the cookie jar the fastest, but ultimately ended up with giving each other bloody noses, and nobody was happy at the end of it. It was just a pile of disappointment. The Eager-Edged Sword never came into play because I was never able to hold my ground well enough with the weapons that I had in order to really pick up the heavy. I did again enjoy that we were running the Stasis Warlock. I don't know why Stasis Warlock was so popular, and Chromatic Fire did have a few times where it really surprised me, and it worked well for the Rat King because, kind of being within that range, it meant that we were able to get a lot of benefit out of our kills, but never truly was I ever in a place where I felt comfortable with this. This build definitely tried my patience and my mental fortitude. It wasn't the worst build I've ever used, but it was very close to it. Offense 5, defense 6, versatility 4, survivability 7, speed 5, consistency 5, flavor. Now normally I rate a build based on its synergy and how unusual and unique it is, but this build sucked. This was definitely the worst build that we had here, but it was definitely flavorful. It was a bit like eating an Oreo, following it with a shot of orange juice, and then eating, I don't know, like guacamole chips after. It had flavor, but it all tasted like vomit once it was all said and done. So I'm going to give this a C. In the viability, I'm going to say a very optimistic C, just solely because sidearms are very good and Rat King is very good. All right, y'all, it's time for the Glock and Balls. If you hear the disappointment in my voice, this entire video is not scripted, by the way. If it feels like it has been, I guess that goes to show how often I've been doing these, but this video is not scripted. But yeah, I was given Glock and Balls, which, don't get me wrong, it's hilarious. It's really funny. For everybody that's not using it. So this build uses a blue sidearm, the Roderick C, which again, sidearms are really good right now. Like this sidearm unironically kicked a lot of ass. If you don't have a good kinetic sidearm, I'm not even joking, pick up the Roderick C. You'll probably be okay. But this build uses, again, a trace rifle, and not just any trace rifle. My least favorite trace rifle. The trace rifle I hate more than any other weapon on this freaking game. The Ruinous Effigy. Now, why do I hate this weapon so much? Well, again, it's a trace rifle, but B, because it has so much potential and it does so many things so wrong. I love the idea of being able to get a ball and then taking said ball and shoving it in my enemy's face. That's hilarious, which is why Glock and Balls is even on this video to begin with. But the ball is so underwhelming. The block is useless. The slam takes too long, even though it does insta-kill, you know, normal guardians. But not just that, you have to go over and pick it up, and if you do, you can't switch weapons, and you can't do any class ability anything, or else it'll drop it. I know Bungie's likelihood of ever touching the Ruinous Effigy is next to none, but I have a feeling that Bungie tends to at least stop by the channel every now and then. Maybe I'm just being hopefully minded, but please buff Ruinous Effigy and trace rifles in general. Unironically though, this was not bad. Like I said, the Glock part of the Glock and Balls really carried this build, and for the "and" section, I ran the 6th Coyote, which gave us double of the invisible dodge, which really helped us to slink around the map and get kills on things. But this build was definitely not the most viable thing. It was only because we were in a closer range map, and we had a Glock that this ever made any sort of dent on the enemy team whatsoever. So, with all that out of the way, offense 6, defense 4, versatility 4, survivability 5, speed 6, consistency 6, and flavor I am just, you know what? Just for the name alone, it's so creative. It's freaking hilarious. If I wasn't emotionally and mentally destroyed by what playing this build actually did to me, I would be more optimistic right now. But I'm giving this an SS tier for your flavor. Congratulations. That's the best tasting Glock and Balls I've ever had in my life. And viability B. I will not be explaining further.